A resident uploaded 41 minutes of dashcam footage to the neighborhood forum on a Friday morning. No commentary, no edit, just a county sheriff's deputy and a public works crew pulling 4 HOA signs out of the ground, one by one, with a post-driver bar. By Sunday evening, 40,000 views. The HOA president resigned. Here's what the forum didn't show. I built that road in 2003, permitted it, engineered the drainage, laid the asphalt, recorded the easement in the county deed records the week construction finished. Then I maintained it for 21 years, every spring, every fall, every culvert cleaning, every receipt filed by year. Total, $84,000. Out of my pocket. Not a dollar from the HOA that had been using the road since 2007 and telling 240 households it was theirs. At the hearing, the judge asked one question. Does the HOA have any maintenance records for this road? Their attorney said, "No, Your Honor." The judge ruled in 5 minutes. The signs came down. The easement was negotiated. The $84,000 came back. Then I used the money to repave the road. The gate is still there. Before we dive in, I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from today? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Nolan Voss had built roads for 32 years before he built the one that mattered most. Not for a client, not for a subdivision plat, not for a municipal contract, but for himself. Across the western edge of 180 acres he had bought in 2001 and intended to hold for the rest of his life. He had built it the way he built everything, with a permit, with a licensed grading contractor, with compacted base course and drainage culverts and an asphalt surface laid to specification, and with the private road easement recorded in the county deed records before the first load of aggregate was delivered to the site. He had built it correctly because he had spent 32 years watching what happened to roads that were built without permits and easements recorded without precision and drainage designed without calculation. They became disputes, the kind of disputes that took years and attorneys and court proceedings to resolve. And he had spent enough of his career resolving other people's infrastructure disputes that he had no interest in generating his own. He had come to the 180-acre parcel through the specific accumulation of professional judgment that 32 years of residential development produced. He had been looking for raw land in the county's western growth corridor since the late 1990s, not for immediate development, but for the long position, the kind of land acquisition that made sense when you understood where the county's growth pressure was moving, and were willing to hold a parcel for a decade or two while that pressure built toward it. The western corridor had good bones, gentle topography, adequate drainage, proximity to the county highway network, and enough distance from the existing development clusters that the land was priced as agricultural rather than developmental. He had looked at 11 parcels over 3 years, and had bought the 180-acre tract in the spring of 2001 for a price that reflected its agricultural valuation, and that his 32 years of development experience told him was a significant discount to what the land would be worth in 15 years. The parcel's western boundary ran along a county highway for approximately half a mile, the kind of highway frontage that was the first thing a developer looked at when evaluating raw land. The public road access that established the parcel's development viability. But the parcel's usable interior, the eastern 150 acres where the topography was right for building and where the soil conditions were adequate for residential construction, was set back from the highway by a band of wet ground along the western edge, a seasonal drainage swale that ran north-south across the parcel's western third and that made direct driveway access from the highway impractical at the parcel's interior locations. Getting from the highway to the usable part of the parcel required crossing the wet band, which required culverts and a graded road, which Nolan had designed himself on a Sunday afternoon in the fall of 2002 using the topographic survey he had commissioned when he bought the land. The road design was straightforward, the kind of access road problem he had solved dozens of times for clients over his career. The highway connection point was fixed by the topography. One location along the western boundary where the grade was gentle enough for a standard road approach, and the wet ground was narrow enough for a single culvert crossing. From that point, the road ran east across the wet band on a graded base, crossed the drainage swale on a 36-inch reinforced concrete culvert, and then continued east through the parcel's interior to Nolan's building site at the eastern edge, a total of 0.6 miles from the highway to the gate at the building site. He had designed the road to the county's private road construction standard: 20-foot travel width, 6-inch compacted aggregate base, 3-inch asphalt surface, with drainage culverts at the swale crossing and at 2 low points along the road's length, where sheet flow from the adjacent hillside crossed the road's path. He had applied for the county road construction permit in January 2003, a standard private road permit application, the kind the county's road department processed for rural property access on a routine basis. The application had required the road's design specifications, the grading contractor's license, and a site plan showing the road's alignment and drainage structures. He had prepared the application himself and had submitted it with his PE seal on the design specifications. He had maintained his professional engineer's license after retirement from active development practice, the way that professionals in infrastructure fields maintained licenses they had earned through years of examination and experience. The permit had been issued in 3 weeks. He had kept the permit in the property file he had started on the day he bought the land. The grading contractor had mobilized in April 2003. Nolan on site every day of the 3-week construction period, the same presence he had maintained on every project in his career. He had watched the clearing, the rough grading, the culvert installation at the swale crossing, the aggregate base placement and compaction, and the asphalt paving crew on the final 2 days. He had inspected each phase against the design specifications and had noted deficiencies twice: a culvert bedding condition at the second low point crossing that was inadequately compacted, and a section of base course that had not achieved the specified density, and had required both to be corrected before the next phase proceeded. The contractor had corrected both. The road had been built to specification. He had recorded the private road easement on the parcel the week after construction was complete, a standard easement instrument describing the road's location by meets and bounds, reference to the parcel's surveyed boundaries, identifying the easement as a private road easement appurtenant to the 180-acre parcel, and recording it in the county deed records under the parcel's index. The easement recording was a formality in the technical sense. The road was on his own property, and he was not granting access to anyone else. So the easement document was simply a recorded instrument establishing the road's legal status as a private road on private property, the kind of instrument that would be visible in any subsequent title search, and that would answer the question of the road's ownership and access rights without ambiguity. He had noted the easement recording number in the property file and had started the maintenance log. The maintenance log was a standard contractor's field log, a hardbound notebook with dated entries, the format he had used on construction projects for 30 years. The first entry was dated the week after the easement recording. Road inspection post-construction. Surface condition good, drainage structures clear, culvert at swale crossing performing as designed. No maintenance required at this time. He had inspected the road every spring and every fall from that entry forward, noting the surface condition, the drainage structure status, any deficiencies, and the corrective action taken, and the cost of any maintenance work performed. He had retained every receipt, the pothole patching invoices, the culvert cleaning contractor's bills, the grading contractor's invoices for the winter road grading passes that kept the aggregate shoulders from encroaching on the travel surface, the asphalt crack sealing receipts from the years when the surface had developed the minor cracking that a well-maintained asphalt surface developed after a decade of use. The receipts were filed by year in the property file, each one stapled to the maintenance log entry it documented. The average annual maintenance cost over 20 years was $4,200. Some years were less, years when the surface held and the culverts ran clean, and the only cost was the contractor's time for the inspection. Some years were more. The second asphalt overlay on the first 200 feet of road near the highway connection in year 14, which had cost $12,400, and which the maintenance log documented with the contractor's invoice and Nolan's own inspection notes showing the surface condition that had made the overlay necessary. The total maintenance expenditure documented in the log over 20 years was $84,000, not a number Nolan had calculated for any purpose when he made it, but a number that was present in the receipts file for anyone who wanted to add it up. He had been adding it up annually since year 15, which was the year he had begun thinking seriously about what the road's use by the Millstone Ridge development meant, and what the appropriate response to that use was. The Millstone Ridge development had begun construction in 2006, a 240-unit residential subdivision on the parcel immediately east of Nolan's property, the parcel that shared Nolan's eastern boundary for approximately 0.8 miles. He had known the development was coming since 2004, when the developer, a mid-sized regional home builder named Caldwell Properties, had submitted the subdivision plat application to the county's planning department. He had reviewed the plat application as a matter of professional habit, the way he reviewed every major development application in the county's western corridor, and had noted immediately that the plat showed a secondary entrance on the development's western boundary, a connection from the development's internal road network to Nolan's private road at a point approximately 200 feet from the county highway. He had called Caldwell Properties development director in the fall of 2004 and had said, "Your secondary entrance connects to my private road. You'll need a recorded easement." The development director had called back 2 days later and had said, "We'd like to discuss an easement for secondary access across your road." What would that require? Nolan had said, "A recorded easement instrument describing the access corridor, a maintenance cost-sharing agreement, and compensation for the road's construction cost allocated to the secondary access use." He had given a preliminary figure, not a negotiating position, a professional estimate of what the road's construction cost allocation to the development's secondary access use represented. The development director had said he would take it to Caldwell's principals and call back. He had not called back. Nolan had followed up in writing 6 weeks later, a letter to Caldwell Properties president, certified mail, noting the easement conversation and requesting a response. The response had come 3 weeks after that, a single paragraph from the president saying that Caldwell's legal counsel had reviewed the access question and concluded that the road connection was consistent with the county's development standards and that Caldwell did not believe a separate easement instrument was required. Nolan had read the response and had noted it in his property file. Caldwell Properties easement refusal, letter from president, date. No easement granted, no agreement reached. Road connection proceeding without recorded access right. File, current. He had not pursued it further at that time, not because he had conceded the point, he had not, but because he understood the specific value of patience in a situation where the other party had committed their position to writing and where time was working in his favor rather than against him. Caldwell had refused the easement in writing. The road was Nolan's private property, with a recorded easement instrument in the county deed records. The development was proceeding on the assumption that the road connection was permissible without a recorded access right. Every year that the development used the road without a recorded easement was another year of documented unauthorized use on his record, not prescriptive use that would establish a right, because the maintenance log established his continuous ownership behavior, but documented use that established the scope and duration of the trespass when the time came to address it. He had understood something about timing from 32 years in development. The right moment to act on a property rights issue was not the moment when you first identified the issue. It was the moment when the other party had invested enough in the unauthorized use that resolution required a formal instrument, when they had built infrastructure, spent money, established community reliance, and created a public record of their assumption. At that point, the resolution was not a conversation between a property owner and a contractor who made an error. It was a transaction between two parties who both understood that the road access was necessary and that its legal basis needed to be correct. He had waited for that moment. He had documented the road's use in the meantime, the traffic that appeared on his road in 2007 when Millstone Ridge's first residents moved in, the secondary entrance gate that Caldwell had installed at the connection point, the pavement markings on the development's internal road directing residents to the secondary exit. He had photographed the entrance connection annually, noting the traffic volume and the condition of the connection point where the development's pavement met his road surface. He had continued the maintenance log, every spring and fall inspection, every receipt, every culvert cleaning, every patch. He had watched the development grow from 2007 to 2024, 240 units fully occupied, the secondary entrance in regular use as a morning exit route, and an alternative entry for residents whose unit locations made it faster than the primary entrance. He had watched the HOA form after Caldwell's bankruptcy in 2009, and take over the development's management. The board inheriting the secondary entrance and the assumption and the complete ignorance of the road's private status that the bankruptcy had transferred along with everything else. He had watched 4 different HOA presidents manage the development without any of them ever checking the road records. He had watched the secondary entrance become a community assumption, the kind of infrastructure that residents use daily without thinking about who built it or who owned it, or whether anyone had ever established the legal right to use it. He had been thinking about all of that when Cecily Marsh had been elected HOA president 4 years ago, and he had been paying particular attention to the community forums since then, watching for the specific kind of institutional action that would tell him the HOA had moved from informal assumption to formal claim. In March of the current year, Cecily had posted to the community forum that the board was planning to formalize the secondary access road's maintenance and signage as part of a community infrastructure improvement initiative. She had used the phrase, "our secondary access road," without qualification. She had described plans for wayfinding signs and a speed limit installation. She had mentioned that the board was adding a road maintenance line item to the annual assessment. Nolan had read the post on a Tuesday evening and had looked at his property file and his maintenance log and the easement recording number in the county deed records, and had thought about the 20 years of receipts in the file and the 2004 easement refusal letter and the $84,000 in maintenance costs, and the patience he had maintained for 18 years, waiting for exactly this kind of institutional commitment to an assumption that had no legal foundation. He had written in his maintenance log that evening, "HOA Community Forum, Secondary Access Road Formalization, announced. Signs, speed limit, maintenance assessment. Institutional claim incoming. File, current. Action, pending." He had closed the log and put it back in the property file cabinet and had gone to bed. The signs went up on a Friday. He had photographed them Saturday morning. 4 green HOA branded signs on his private road. The county sign permit number visible on the installation documentation he pulled from the county's online permit records that afternoon. He had read the permit application. The HOA had described the road as HOA Common Area Infrastructure. The county's sign permitting office had issued the permit without checking the road records. He had looked at the permit application for a long moment. The HOA had told the county the road was theirs, in writing, in a permit application, and the county had issued a permit on that basis, and the permit was now in the county's public record, identifying the road as HOA infrastructure. The institutional commitment he had been waiting for was complete. The paper trail was established. The assumption had been formalized in a county permit and a board resolution and a community assessment. He had called Owen Pratt that Saturday afternoon. He had said, "I need you to pull a title chain and draft a demand letter." He had described the road, the easement recording, the Caldwell refusal letter, the HOA's sign permit, the board resolution, the maintenance assessment. He had described the maintenance log and the 20 years of receipts. He had said, "The road is mine. They've just told the county it's theirs. I need that corrected formally." Owen had said, "Send me the property file." Nolan had pulled the file from the cabinet, the deed, the easement recording, the road construction permit, the maintenance log, the Caldwell correspondence, and the receipts by year, and had scanned it that evening and sent it as a single, organized PDF, indexed by document type, the way he had organized every project file in 32 years. He had noted the transmission in the maintenance log. Owen Pratt retained. Full property file transmitted. Road, documented. Easement, recorded. Maintenance, 20 years. Institutional claim, on record. Action, initiated. He had closed the log and gone to the window that looked west across the parcel toward the road's alignment. The asphalt surface visible in the evening light, the drainage culverts doing their work under the road's surface, the way they had been doing it since 2003. The 4 HOA signs at their posts along the road's length, reflecting the last of the daylight back at him in green and white. He had built the road. He had permitted the road. He had maintained the road for 20 years at $84,000 of his own money. He had recorded the easement in the county deed records the week after construction was complete. He had the Caldwell refusal letter in his file, and the maintenance receipts in the cabinet, and the easement recording number in the county deed records, and 32 years of professional experience in exactly the kind of matter that was now, finally, after 18 years of documented patience, ready to be resolved. He had turned off the window light and gone back to his desk. The signs would not be there long. The signs went up on a Friday in late March. Nolan had seen the installation crew from the western edge of his parcel that afternoon. A two-man crew with a post driver and a truck bed full of green sign blanks, working their way along the road from the highway connection point eastward. He had watched from a distance and had not approached. He had noted the installation in his maintenance log that evening. HOA sign installation observed. Friday afternoon. 4 signs visible from western boundary. Installation crew. 2 men, green sign blanks, post driver. Photographs. Pending. Saturday morning. He had gone out Saturday at 7 a.m. with his camera. The same Canon DSLR he used for property documentation. The one whose file metadata stamped each image with the date, time, and GPS coordinates. The documentation habit of a man who had learned in 32 years of development that a photograph without a verifiable date was a photograph whose evidentiary value was negotiable. He had walked the road from the highway connection point to the gate at his building site, the full 0.6 miles, and had photographed each sign from 3 angles: the sign face, the sign's mounting post and base, and the sign's position relative to the road's alignment and the adjacent property boundary. The first sign was at the highway connection point, a large green rectangular sign mounted on 2 posts at the road's entrance, reading Millstone Ridge in white capital letters above a smaller line reading Secondary Entrance. The sign was the kind of wayfinding marker that residential developments used at their public entrances. Professional grade, powder-coated aluminum, the HOA's logo in the upper left corner. It was mounted at the road's edge on his parcel, 2 posts driven into his ground, facing the county highway where every passing vehicle could read it. He had photographed it from the highway shoulder, the sign face with the county highway visible in the background, the parcel's western boundary marker visible at the road's edge beside the signpost. He had noted the photograph's file number in his maintenance log. The second sign was 150 feet east of the first, at the point where the road crossed the drainage swale on the 36-inch culvert he had installed in 2003. It was a smaller sign, single post, reading Resident Access Road, HOA Maintained, in green and white. He had photographed it from both sides, the face toward the highway and the face toward the interior, and had crouched at the culvert's head wall and looked at the culvert's inlet condition while he was there. Clear. The culvert he had cleaned in the fall was still running clean. The third sign was at the midpoint of the road, a speed limit sign, the standard black and white format, reading 15 miles per hour. Single post, driven into the road's aggregate shoulder on the south side. He had photographed it and had measured the signpost's distance from the road's center line with the tape measure he had brought, 12 feet from center line, within the travel surface's shoulder zone on his property. The fourth sign was the most specific in its legal implication, positioned at the point where the Millstone Ridge development's secondary entrance connected to his road, approximately 200 feet from the highway. The sign was mounted on the development's entrance gate post, the gate Caldwell had installed in 2006, and read, HOA Maintained. No trespassing. Private road. Millstone Ridge residents and guests only. He had stood in front of that sign for a moment. He had read it twice. He had photographed it from 4 angles, including one that showed the sign, the gate post, the connection point where the development's internal pavement met his road surface, and the maintenance log's culvert marker stake he had driven at that location in 2010 to mark the drainage structure's position for annual inspection reference. The culvert marker stake was visible in the lower right corner of the frame, a small wooden stake with a painted orange top, driven into the shoulder by Nolan's own hand 16 years ago, present in the photograph beside the HOA's no trespassing sign on his private road. He had noted the fourth sign's language in his maintenance log. Sign 4. HOA Maintained. No trespassing. Residents and guests only. Position. Secondary entrance connection point. Note. HOA is asserting exclusive access rights on my private road. Language documented. He had gone back to the house and had opened his laptop and had pulled the county's online permit records. He had searched for sign permits issued to the Millstone Ridge HOA in the preceding 60 days and had found it in 4 minutes. A sign permit issued 3 weeks before the installation. Permit number. Issue date. Applicant listed as Millstone Ridge Homeowners Association. Work description listed as installation of 4 wayfinding and regulatory signs on HOA common area road infrastructure at secondary community entrance. He had read the permit application's property description field. The applicant had described the road as HOA common area road infrastructure, located at the western boundary of the Millstone Ridge development. No parcel number for Nolan's property. No reference to any recorded road easement. No reference to any third-party ownership. The county's sign permitting office had accepted the application and issued the permit without pulling the road's parcel records. A standard processing failure in a permit office that handled hundreds of sign applications per month, most of which were on the applicant's own property, and none of which required a title search as part of the permitting review. He had pulled the county road records himself. He had searched his parcel number, the 180-acre parcel, and had found the road's easement recording in the deed index. Private road easement, recorded date, recording instrument number, grantor, Nolan Voss, grantee, Nolan Voss, the standard self-grant form for a private road easement on the grantor's own property. The recording was clear and complete. The road was his. The easement was his. The county's own deed records established it in the same database that the sign permit office had not checked before issuing Cecily's permit. He had printed both documents, the sign permit and the easement recording, and had set them side by side on his desk. The permit said HOA, Common Area Road Infrastructure. The easement recording said Private Road Easement, Nolan Voss. The two documents described the same road. Only one of them was a recorded title instrument. He had noted the conflict in his maintenance log. County sign permit reviewed. Applicant described road as HOA Common Area Infrastructure. No parcel reference to my property. No easement reference. County issued permit without checking road records. Private road easement recording confirmed in county deed index. Instrument number. Conflict. On record. He had called Owen Pratt. Owen had already received the property file Nolan had sent the previous week and had been working through the title chain. He had confirmed the easement recording and had pulled the Millstone Ridge Development's subdivision plat, the 2006 filing that showed the secondary entrance on the development's western boundary and that contained, in the plat's notes, no reference to any recorded access right across the adjacent parcel. The plat had been approved and recorded by the county's planning department in 2006 without any condition requiring a recorded easement for the secondary entrance connection. Owen had said, "The plat was approved with the entrance shown and no easement noted. That's the planning department's error in 2006. They should have required a recorded easement as a condition of approval for any entrance connecting to a private road. They didn't. Caldwell built the entrance, went bankrupt, and the HOA inherited the entrance and the problem." Nolan had said, "And now they've told the county the road is theirs." Owen had said, "In a permit application, which is a public record. I want to see the board resolution you mentioned." Nolan had pulled the community forum and had found the board resolution posted by the HOA's secretary the week after the signs went up. A formal board resolution, number and date, designating the road as Millstone Ridge Community Access Infrastructure, authorizing the sign installation and the speed limit posting, and establishing a $45 annual road maintenance assessment to fund ongoing maintenance of the community access road. The resolution had been passed at a noticed board meeting by a vote of 5-0. Cecily had moved the resolution. The board had seconded and voted unanimously. He had sent Owen the resolution by email while they were on the phone. Owen had read it and said, "They assessed residents for maintenance of a road they don't own." The maintenance assessment is particularly useful. It establishes that the board represented to 240 households that the road was HOA-maintained infrastructure, which the board had the authority to assess for. They made that representation in a formal resolution. It's in the HOA's permanent governance record. Nolan had said, "And they've never maintained it. I have the maintenance receipts." Owen had said, 20 years of receipts in your name. No maintenance records in the HOA's name, because they've never done any. The road's entire maintenance history is your expense, your documentation, your receipts. They passed a resolution to fund maintenance of a road they've never maintained because you've been doing it. Nolan had said, "The demand letter." Owen had said, "I'll have it by end of week. I want to attach the easement recording, the Caldwell refusal correspondence, and a maintenance cost summary. Not the full receipts, but the annual totals by year and the 20-year aggregate. I want the HOA to understand the scope of what they're dealing with before they decide how to respond, Nolan had said. Include the sign permit. I want them to know I've read it, Owen had said. Done. In the 3 days between the phone call and Owen's draft arriving, Nolan had attended to the maintenance log entry for the spring inspection cycle, the annual inspection he had been conducting every spring for 20 years, which he conducted on schedule regardless of any other activity associated with the road. He had walked the full 0.6 miles with his clipboard and his maintenance log, noting the surface condition at each inspection station he had established in year 1 and had used every year since. The surface was in good condition. The crack sealing he had done the previous fall had held through the winter. The culverts were clear. The aggregate shoulders were intact. He had noted each inspection station's condition in the maintenance log with the same format he had used for 20 years. Station number, date, surface condition, drainage condition, deficiencies noted, corrective action required. He had noted no deficiencies. He had written at the end of the inspection entry, spring inspection complete, surface condition good, drainage structures clear, no maintenance required at this time. Signs. 4 HOA signs present at stations 1, 2, 4, and at secondary entrance connection. Signs documented in photograph file. He had initialed the entry and closed the log. Owen's draft had arrived Thursday evening. 5 pages. The demand letter structured in the format Owen used for property rights demands, where the factual record was complete and the legal position was unambiguous. Nolan had read it at the kitchen table and had called Owen the next morning with 2 technical corrections. A description of the culvert at the swale crossing that had understated the structure's size, and a reference to the road construction permit's issue date that was off by 1 month. Owen had made both corrections. The final demand letter went out the following Monday. Certified mail, return receipt, to Cecily Marsh as HOA board president, to the HOA's registered agent, and to the HOA's management company. Owen had also sent a copy by certified mail to the county's sign permit office, with a cover note identifying the permit application's erroneous description of the road as HOA infrastructure, and attaching the easement recording as the correct parcel record. The letter's first section established the road's ownership, the 180-acre parcel, Nolan's deed, the private road easement recorded in the county deed records at the instrument number cited, the road's construction in 2003 under county road construction permit number cited, the easement's legal description by meets and bounds. Owen had attached a reduced copy of the easement recording as Exhibit A, the actual recorded instrument, instrument number visible, the grantor's name visible, the road's legal description in the instrument's body. The second section addressed the 2005 easement request. Owen had quoted the relevant sentence from Caldwell Properties' response letter. Caldwell's legal counsel had concluded that a separate easement instrument was not required, and had noted that Nolan's property file contained Caldwell's letter and his own follow-up correspondence, establishing that the road's private status had been communicated to the development's owner before construction of the secondary entrance began. He had attached both letters as Exhibit B. The third section addressed the 18 years of use. Owen had noted the secondary entrance's installation in 2006, the traffic pattern that had developed since the development's first occupancy in 2007, and the absence of any recorded access right in the county deed records for any Millstone Ridge entity to use the road. He had noted that 18 years of use without a recorded easement did not establish a prescriptive right, because the continuous maintenance of the road by the parcel's owner, documented in the maintenance log and supported by 20 years of contractor receipts, was inconsistent with the hostility element required for adverse possession or prescriptive easement claims. He had not elaborated on the legal framework. He had stated it plainly and moved on. The fourth section addressed the HOA's recent actions, the sign installation, the county sign permit describing the road as HOA infrastructure, the board resolution designating the road as community access infrastructure, and the $45 annual road maintenance assessment. Owen had noted that each of these actions represented a formal claim to infrastructure the HOA did not own and had no recorded right to use, and that the sign permit application's erroneous description of the road had been copied to the county's sign permit office for correction. The fifth section was the demand. The HOA was directed to remove all 4 signs from Nolan's private road within 45 days, to rescind the board resolution designating the road as HOA infrastructure, to rescind the road maintenance assessment and refund any amounts collected under it, and to acknowledge in writing that the road was Nolan's private property, with no recorded access easement for the HOA's use. Owen had also directed the HOA to contact his office within 45 days to commence good faith negotiation of a recorded access easement, an easement whose terms would include compensation for the road's construction cost allocation, to the secondary access use and ongoing maintenance cost sharing. The alternative to negotiating the easement was cessation of use. The HOA would need to close the secondary entrance and route all resident traffic through the primary entrance. Owen had written one closing paragraph. Mr. Voss has maintained this road at his sole expense for 20 years, at a documented total cost of $84,000, to a standard that has made it usable for the 240 households in the adjacent development, who have been using it without authorization since 2007. He has been patient. He is prepared to reach a reasonable resolution. He is also prepared to pursue all available legal remedies to protect his property rights if the HOA declines to engage constructively. The certified mail receipts had come back to Owen's office the following week. Cecily's signature on the board president's copy, the management company's signature on the management copy, the registered agent's signature on the agent's copy. Owen had filed all 3 and had called Nolan to confirm delivery. Nolan had noted the delivery confirmation in his maintenance log. Owen's demand letter delivered. Date: Cecily Marsh signature confirmed. 45-day response window. Deadline date. File: current. He had looked at the deadline date he had written and had looked at the calendar and had noted that the deadline fell 6 weeks out. Enough time for the HOA to consult their own counsel, hold a board meeting, and make a decision about how to respond to a demand letter that was attached to a recorded easement instrument, and 20 years of maintenance receipts, and a copy of their own board president's refusal to grant a recorded easement 18 years ago. He had closed the maintenance log and had gone out to check the culvert at the swale crossing, not because it needed checking, but because he checked it every time he thought about the road's future, the habit of maintaining what you owned, regardless of what else was happening with it. The culvert was clear. The road surface was intact. The 4 green HOA signs stood at their posts along the road's length, reading Millstone Ridge and Resident Access Road, and HOA maintained, and no trespassing on private property that the HOA did not own. He had looked at the no trespassing sign for a moment, the irony of it specific and complete in the way that only 18 years of patient documentation could make it specific and complete. The HOA had put a no trespassing sign on his road, on his private road, telling people to stay off his property on behalf of an organization that had no legal right to be on it. He had walked back to the house. The 45 days would tell him which path they were going to take. He had given them the option of the reasonable path, the easement negotiation, the formal instrument, the resolution that acknowledged the road's ownership and established the access right correctly. He had given them that option because 32 years of development practice had taught him that most disputes resolved on the reasonable path when the alternative was made clear enough and the documentation was complete enough that the other party understood the difference between a negotiating position and a factual record. But he had also installed the gate hardware in his garage the previous week, the automated security gate system, still in its packaging, purchased 6 months ago when he had begun watching the community forum with serious attention. He was prepared for both paths. Owen Pratt's office was on the 4th floor of the county seat's professional building, the kind of practice space that accumulated its character from 26 years of case files rather than interior design. The shelves behind his desk carrying binders organized by matter type, and the wall beside the window carrying the framed certificates that a 26-year property and easement practice produced. The bar admission, the continuing legal education completions in real property and land use, the County Bar Association's property law section chairmanship from 8 years ago. He had the specific professional quality of an attorney who had handled enough road right-of-way litigation to find it straightforward, not dismissive of its complexity, but familiar with its structure in the way that a surgeon was familiar with a procedure performed hundreds of times. The complexity was real. The pathway through it was known. He had received Nolan's property file on a Monday and had spent 3 days on the title chain before calling Nolan with his findings. He had pulled every instrument in the chain: Nolan's deed from the 2001 acquisition, the private road easement recording from 2003, the county road construction permit from 2003, the Millstone Ridge subdivision plat from 2006, the Caldwell Properties correspondence from 2004 and 2005, the Caldwell bankruptcy filing from 2009, and the HOA's formation documents from the same year, and the county road records covering the parcel's full address range. He had also pulled the HOA's sign permit application, the document Nolan had identified, and had read it against the road's title chain with the specific attention of an attorney looking for the gap between what a permit application said and what the underlying records established. The gap was complete. The HOA's sign permit application had described the road as HOA Common Area Road Infrastructure and had not referenced Nolan's parcel number, not referenced the recorded easement instrument, and not identified any recorded access right in the HOA's name. The county's sign permit office had issued the permit on the basis of the application's self-description, without pulling the parcel records for the road's actual location. Owen had seen this before, not frequently, but often enough to recognize it as a processing gap in permit offices that handled high volumes of routine applications and that relied on applicants to correctly identify the property they were permitted on. Most applicants did. The HOA had not, whether from ignorance or from the specific optimism of an organization that had used a road for 18 years and had gradually ceased to question whether it had the right to. He had called Nolan on Thursday afternoon and had said, "The title chain is clean and complete. The road is yours. Let me walk you through what the records show." He had started with Nolan's deed, the 2001 acquisition instrument, the parcel's legal description by meets and bounds, the grantor and grantee, the recording data. Standard residential acquisition, nothing encumbered. The parcel transferred free and clear of any access easement in favor of any third party at the time of purchase. He had then described the private road easement recording from 2003, the instrument Nolan had recorded the week after construction was complete, the self-grant form establishing the road as a private road easement appurtenant to the parcel, the legal description matching the road's as-built alignment. He had noted the instrument number and the recording date and had said, "This instrument is in the county deed index. Anyone searching this parcel's title would find it on the first page of the encumbrance search. It is not obscure. It is not ambiguous. It says private road. It says Nolan Voss, and it has been in the county's records for 21 years. He had then described the Millstone Ridge subdivision plat, the 2006 filing, the secondary entrance shown on the plat's western boundary, the plat notes. He had said, "The plat shows the entrance. The plat notes do not reference any recorded access easement across your parcel. The county's planning department approved the plat with the entrance shown and no easement condition attached. That's the planning department's 2006 error. They should have required Caldwell to record an access easement as a condition of plat approval for any entrance connecting to a private road. Standard practice. They didn't do it. I've seen this happen in 3 other matters involving the same planning department era. There was a period in the mid-2000s when the department's plat review was less rigorous on access conditions than it should have been." Nolan had said, "Caldwell knew. I have the correspondence." Owen had said, "I read it. The 2004 conversation and the 2005 refusal letter are in your file. Caldwell's president told you in writing that their council concluded no easement was required. That letter is a documented acknowledgement that Caldwell was aware of the access question and chose to proceed without resolving it. It also establishes that the access connection was not inadvertent. It was a deliberate decision made after your refusal to grant the easement. That's useful." He had then described the Caldwell bankruptcy and the HOA formation. Caldwell had filed Chapter 7 in 2009. The bankruptcy trustee had liquidated the development's remaining assets, and the HOA had been formed under the development's governing documents as the entity responsible for common area maintenance and governance. The HOA had inherited the secondary entrance, the internal road network, and, critically, the complete absence of any recorded easement for the secondary entrance's use of Nolan's road. The bankruptcy record contained no reference to the road access issue. The HOA's formation documents contained no reference to it. The assumption had transferred with the assets and the liabilities, and the governing documents and everything else, unexamined, unrecorded, and incorrect. Owen had said, "The HOA has operated for 15 years under the assumption that the secondary entrance connected to a road they had the right to use. That assumption has no recorded basis. There is no easement instrument in the county deed records granting the HOA or any predecessor any access right across your parcel. The road is your private property. Their use of it for 18 years is unauthorized." Nolan had said, "And the prescriptive easement question." Owen had said, "I was getting to that. The HOA will raise it. It's their only potential argument, and their counsel will identify it immediately if they retain counsel. Prescriptive easement by adverse use requires open, notorious, hostile, and continuous use without the owner's permission for the statutory period, which in this state is 15 years. The HOA has the duration, 18 years of use. They have open and notorious. The entrance is visible and the use is documented. But hostile is where they have a problem, and it's a significant problem. Hostile in the prescriptive easement context means use that is inconsistent with the owner's rights, use that operates as if the user has a right the owner hasn't granted. But your maintenance log establishes that you have been maintaining this road throughout the 18 years of their use. Every spring and fall inspection, every pothole fill, culvert cleaning, crack seal. Your maintenance behavior is the behavior of an owner who is actively managing their property. It's inconsistent with the kind of abandonment or acquiescence that courts look for when evaluating whether an owner's inaction contributed to the prescriptive use. You haven't been inactive. You've been present on this road twice a year for 20 years with a clipboard and a maintenance crew. Nolan had said, "And their maintenance assessment." Owen had said, "They assessed residents for maintenance they've never performed because you've been performing it. The assessment resolution is in their governance record. When we ask for their maintenance records in discovery, the receipts, the contractor invoices, the work orders for the road maintenance, they assessed $45 per unit per year to fund. They'll have nothing, because there's nothing to have. The road's entire maintenance history is in your file." He had paused and then said, "There's one more thing the title change showed, the county road records. I pulled the full address range for your parcel's road frontage. The road is not in the county's road maintenance system. It has never been publicly dedicated. It appears nowhere in the county's road network records as a public road, a county-maintained road, or a road subject to any public right-of-way. The county's sign permit office issued a permit for signs on a road that the county's own road records show is private property. They issued it without cross-referencing their own road network database." Nolan had said, "The demand letter goes out this week." Owen had said, "I'll have the draft to you by tomorrow." The draft had arrived the next morning, 5 pages, the structure Nolan had already seen in summary. He had made 2 technical corrections and had sent the annotated draft back to Owen by noon. Owen had finalized the letter and sent it out Monday certified mail, the copies to the sign permit office included. The certified receipts had come back by Wednesday of the following week. Owen had called Nolan to confirm delivery and had said, "The 45-day clock starts from the date of receipt, which is Monday. Deadline, 6 weeks out. I'll expect a response within 3 weeks. If their counsel is engaged, 3 weeks is enough time to review the title chain and advise the board on their position." The board meeting had been called for the following Thursday. A noticed member meeting, open to all 240 units, posted to the community forum with the subject line, HOA Road Access, Important Update. Cecily had posted the notice herself, with a brief description saying the board had received a letter from an attorney representing an adjacent property owner regarding the secondary entrance road, and that the board would be discussing the matter and taking questions at Thursday's meeting. The forum had generated 47 replies in the 24 hours after the notice was posted. The replies ran the full range, residents asking what the letter said, residents speculating about the road's status, one resident who said he had always assumed the road was county-maintained, one resident who said she had assumed it was HOA property since she moved in 7 years ago, one resident who said he had never thought about it at all. Cecily had replied once, a brief post saying the board would address all questions at Thursday's meeting, and asking residents to hold their questions until then. Nolan had read the forum thread. He had noted 2 things. Not a single resident in 47 replies had mentioned ever seeing any HOA maintenance work on the road, and not a single resident had expressed any awareness that the road might be private property. The assumption had been total and unexamined for 18 years. It had never been questioned because it had never needed to be questioned. The road was there, it worked, it was smooth and clear and well drained, and nobody had thought to ask why. He had noted the forum activity in his maintenance log. HOA forum, board meeting notice posted re-demand letter. 47 resident replies. No resident references to HOA road maintenance. No resident awareness of private status. Assumption, total. The board meeting had occurred Thursday evening. 62 residents in the community center. Cecily at the board table with the 4 other board members. Nolan had not attended. He had not been invited and had not sought to attend. The board's deliberations were the board's business, and his position was fully stated in Owen's demand letter. Owen had advised him to let the letter speak and to wait for the response. He had read the meeting minutes when the HOA posted them to the forum 6 days later. The minutes were detailed for an HOA board meeting, more detailed than the typical compressed record, which Nolan attributed to the secretary having understood that this meeting's content would matter later, and having documented it accordingly. The minutes recorded Cecily's presentation of Owen's demand letter to the assembled residents. She had summarized the letter's claims: private road ownership, no recorded easement, sign removal demand, maintenance assessment rescission, easement negotiation, or cease use. She had characterized the claims as disputed and had said the board was consulting its own counsel. A board member named Victor had said the development had been using the road for 18 years and that 18 years of use had to count for something legally. Cecily had said that was exactly the question the board's counsel would be evaluating. A resident had asked, "Does the HOA have any documentation of road maintenance it has performed?" The minutes recorded a pause before Cecily's response. The response was, "The board will review its maintenance records." Another resident had asked, "Has anyone checked whether there's a recorded easement?" Cecily had said, "The board's counsel is reviewing the title records." The vote had been taken in closed session at the meeting's end. The residents dismissed, the board remaining. The minutes recorded the closed session vote. The board voted 4-1 to reject the demand and to direct the HOA's counsel to respond, asserting the HOA's established use rights and the prescriptive easement claim. The one dissenting vote was a board member named Ruth Inslee, whose dissent the minutes recorded without explanation. Nolan had read the minutes twice. He had noted Victor's comment about 18 years of use, and had noted the maintenance documentation question and the pause before Cecily's response. He had noted Ruth Inslee's dissent. He had noted that the board had voted to assert prescriptive easement, the argument Owen had identified and addressed in the demand letter, the argument that Nolan's 20-year maintenance log would answer at the appropriate moment. He had written in his maintenance log, HOA board vote, demand rejected, 4-1. Prescriptive easement defense authorized. Ruth Inslee dissent noted. Maintenance documentation question raised at meeting. No HOA maintenance records produced. Board counsel engaged. File, current. Gate installation, this weekend. He had closed the log and gone to the garage where the gate system was still in its packaging on the shelf. He had opened the first box. Owen filed the trespass and quiet title action on a Tuesday. The filing package prepared to the county court's civil division requirements. The complaint naming the Millstone Ridge HOA as defendant and stating 2 causes of action. Trespass, based on 18 years of unauthorized use of Nolan's private road without a recorded access right. And quiet title, seeking a court judgment establishing the road's ownership and access status in the permanent record, and extinguishing any claim the HOA might assert to any access right across Nolan's parcel. The exhibits were the complete property file in court format, Nolan's deed, the private road easement recording, the road construction permit, the 2005 Caldwell easement refusal correspondence, the bankruptcy record, the HOA formation documents, the subdivision plat, the county road records showing no public dedication, the HOA's sign permit application, the board resolution designating the road as HOA infrastructure, and the maintenance log summary with the 20-year receipt totals by year. 14 exhibits, each labeled and referenced in the complaint's factual allegations. The record building from the 2001 acquisition, through the 2003 construction, through the 2005 refusal, through 18 years of unauthorized use to the signs, and the resolution and the maintenance assessment, and the demand and the rejection. Owen had called Nolan when the filing confirmation came through and had said, "We're on the docket. Standard civil timeline. Answer due in 30 days. Scheduling conference within 60. Hearing 4 to 6 months out." Nolan had said, "I'm installing the gate this weekend." Owen had said, "Walk me through it." Nolan had described the gate system in the same technical specificity he had used when describing the bollards to Judith, because Owen, like Judith, was an attorney who verified his client's intended actions against the legal framework before they were taken. And Nolan, like Glenn, was a client who understood exactly why that verification mattered. The gate was a standard automated swing gate, 12-foot opening width, galvanized steel frame, chain link fill panel, mounted on post-set concrete foundations on both sides of the road. The opener was a solar-powered automated actuator with a keypad entry panel and a remote receiver. The gate was positioned at the point where the Millstone Ridge Development's secondary entrance connected to his road, the connection point 200 feet from the highway, the point he had marked in the maintenance log since 2010 with the orange-topped stake that was visible in the photograph of the HOA's no trespassing sign. The gate was on his property, on the recorded private road easement corridor, at a point that was 200 feet east of the county highway, well inside his parcel boundary, not blocking the highway right-of-way, not blocking any recorded public right-of-way or utility easement in the county's records. Owen had asked, "Does the gate position block any access to the county highway other than through your parcel?" Nolan had said, "The development has a primary entrance on its northern boundary connecting to a different county road. The primary entrance is fully functional. Residents can access the county highway network through the primary entrance without using my road. My gate does not block the development's access to the public road network. It blocks the development's access to my private road." Owen had said, "And the gate is on your parcel, as described in the easement recording." Nolan had said, "The post foundations are within 6 inches of the maintenance log station marker I've had at that location since 2010. Marcus, a surveyor I've worked with, confirmed the position against the easement recording's legal description last week. I had him out specifically to confirm the gate position before installation." Owen had said, "Do it Saturday. I want it in before the HOA's council sends us their answer." Nolan had done it Saturday. He had contracted the gate installation to the same contractor who had done the road's original grading work, a company he had used for 20 years, whose crew knew the site and whose work was precise. The crew had arrived at 7 a.m. Saturday and had set the post foundations, poured the concrete, installed the gate frame and panel, mounted the opener, and programmed the keypad by 4 p.m. Nolan had been on site the full day, the same presence he brought to every construction activity on his property, watching each phase against the specification, noting the foundation depth and the gate frame alignment and the opener's cycle test. He had set the keypad code himself after the crew left, a 6-digit code he had chosen and had written in his maintenance log and in no other location. He had cycled the gate twice with the remote to confirm the opener's operation and had locked the gate in the closed position with the keypad's manual lock function. He had photographed the installed gate from 4 angles: the gate face from the development side, showing the keypad panel, the gate face from his property's side, showing the opener and the road running west toward the highway, the full gate assembly from the road's center line, showing the 12-foot opening width and the post foundations, and the gate's position relative to the orange-topped maintenance stake that had been at that location for 16 years. He had noted the installation in his maintenance log. Gate installed, Saturday. Automated swing gate, 12-foot opening, solar opener, keypad entry, post-set foundations. Position, secondary entrance connection point. Confirmed against easement recording, legal description by survey. Code, set and secured. Gate, locked closed. Installation photographs, file. Road access, restricted to authorized entry. He had driven home at 4:30 p.m. and had made dinner and had gone to bed. Cecily called at 8:47 a.m. Sunday. He had been at his kitchen table with his coffee, and the maintenance log opened to Saturday's installation entry when the phone rang. An unfamiliar number, the county's area code, the call coming on his cell phone, whose number was in the county's property records as the parcel's contact number. He had answered on the second ring. She had said, "This is Cecily Marsh, president of the Millstone Ridge HOA. There's a gate on our access road." He had said, "Nolan Voss." "Yes." She had said, "Who the hell are you?" He had said, "I own it all." There had been a pause, the specific pause of a person who had called expecting to find a neighbor who needed to be reasoned with, and had instead found a statement of fact delivered with the complete calm of someone who had been waiting 18 years to say it, and who had the documentation in a cabinet 6 feet away. She had said, "That gate is blocking our community access road." He had said, "It's blocking access to my private road, yes. That's what it's designed to do." She had said, "Residents use that road every day. You can't just close it." He had said, "It's my property. The road is on my parcel, documented in the easement recording in the county deed records. The gate is on my parcel, at the connection point where your development's entrance meets my road. I can close it, and I have." She had said, "This is going to cause serious problems. People need to get in and out of this development." He had said, "The primary entrance on the northern boundary is open and functional. It connects to the county road network. Residents can use it." She had said, "The secondary entrance is our access road. The board designated it as community infrastructure." He had said, "The board designated my private road as community infrastructure in a resolution that has no legal effect on my property rights. The resolution doesn't create an easement. It doesn't override the deed. It doesn't change what the county road records say." She had said, "I'm calling the police." He had said, "I'll give them directions to my gate on my private road." She had said, "You're going to hear from our attorney." He had said, "Owen Pratt's address is on the demand letter. He's expecting to hear from your attorney. He has been since the demand was sent 6 weeks ago. The quiet title action was filed Tuesday. Your counsel will have the case number by end of day Monday." She had said, "You filed a lawsuit." He had said, "Quiet title and trespass, filed Tuesday. The case number is in the county court's civil docket under Voss versus Millstone Ridge HOA." Another pause, longer than the first. He had looked at his coffee while she processed it. She had said, "This is not over." He had said, "I agree. That's why we filed the lawsuit." He had ended the call and had noted it in his maintenance log. Cecily Marsh phone call. Gate objection, community access claim, police referral threatened, attorney referral made. My responses: private road confirmed, gate on private property, primary entrance available. Board resolution has no effect on property rights. Owen Pratt identified as counsel. Quiet title filing referenced. Call duration: approximately 6 minutes. Log entry: current. He had finished his coffee and had gone to check the gate. The gate was closed, the keypad panel facing the development's secondary entrance, the LED indicator showing the locked status. He had looked through the gate's chain-link panel at the road running west toward the highway. 200 feet of his asphalt surface, the drainage swale visible to the north, the HOA's secondary entrance sign at the highway connection point facing him from the far end. The sign that said Millstone Ridge, secondary entrance on his road, facing the highway, telling the county's traveling public that the road behind it belonged to a homeowners association. He had looked at the sign for a moment from the gate's eastern face. Then he had turned and looked at the development's internal road running east from the connection point into the Millstone Ridge development. The internal road that was not his, that was the HOA's property, that had been built and maintained and used without any dispute because it was in fact on the HOA's parcel where it was supposed to be. He had looked at the connection point where the two roads met, his private road ending at the gate, the development's internal road beginning on the other side, 240 households on one side of the gate and the county highway on the other, the gate between them on his property, with his keypad code in its memory. He had driven back to the house. Cecily had posted to the community forum at 10 a.m. Sunday, approximately 70 minutes after the phone call. The post was 4 paragraphs. She had said the HOA had received a demand letter from an attorney representing an adjacent property owner, making claims about the secondary entrance road, that the board had voted to contest those claims, and that while the matter was in progress, the secondary entrance was temporarily inaccessible due to a gate installed by the adjacent property owner. She had said residents should use the primary entrance, and that the board was taking immediate steps to restore access. She had not said the road was private property. She had not said the HOA had no recorded easement. She had said the adjacent property owner's claims were being contested. The forum had generated 180 replies in 6 hours. The replies had the specific energy of a community that had been using something daily for 18 years and had arrived at a gate where there had never been a gate before. The range was wide. Residents asking when the gate would be open. Residents asking what the legal dispute was about. Residents asking why the board hadn't mentioned this at the Thursday meeting. One resident who said he had checked the county deed records online after reading the notice and had found the private road easement in Nolan's name and was asking whether the board had known about it. Cecily had not replied to the forum after the initial post. Nolan had read the forum thread Sunday afternoon. He had noted the resident who had found the easement recording. The deed index search was public and free online, and it had taken that resident less than 24 hours after the gate's installation to find the instrument that had been in the county's records for 21 years. He had noted it in his maintenance log. Forum activity, 180 replies. One resident identified easement recording online. County deed index, public record, found within 24 hours of gate installation. Assumption, beginning to collapse. He had looked at that last phrase. He had written it accurately and without satisfaction. The collapse of a community's 18-year assumption was not a satisfying event in the abstract. It was a necessary event, a correction of a legal error that had been deferrable for 18 years and was no longer deferrable. And the discomfort it caused for 240 households was the direct consequence of a developer's 2005 decision to install an entrance on a road whose owner had declined to grant the easement, and of an HOA board's decision 6 weeks ago to institutionalize a claim to infrastructure it had never owned. He had closed the forum tab and had opened the maintenance log to the gate installation entry, and had read what he had written Saturday afternoon. Gate, locked closed. Road access, restricted to authorized entry. He had added one line below it. Sunday, gate confirmed operational. Primary entrance, available. Secondary entrance, closed pending easement resolution or court order. Record, current. He had closed the log. Outside, the gate was closed at the connection point 200 feet down the road. The keypad panel facing the development's entrance. The solar panel on the opener's housing, tracking the afternoon sun. The road ran clear and empty on his side of the gate. 200 feet of private road from the gate to the highway, smooth and properly drained, maintained to specification for 21 years, belonging to Nolan Voss in the county deed records, and in the maintenance log, and in the easement recording, and in the quiet title action now on the county court's civil docket. He went inside and put the coffee on for the second time that day, and sat at the kitchen table and looked at the maintenance log open on the table's surface. 21 years of entries, 21 years of spring and fall inspections, receipts, culvert cleanings, asphalt patches, aggregate shoulder maintenance, drainage structure repairs. 21 years of ownership behavior, documented twice a year in the same format, in the same hardbound notebook. The record of a man who had built something, and had maintained it, and had recorded it, and had waited with the specific patience of someone who understood that the right moment to act was when the other party's overreach was complete enough that the record was unambiguous. The record was unambiguous. The gate was closed. Owen had the case number. The forum had 180 replies, and one resident who had found the easement recording in the county's public deed index. The 45-day demand window had expired without compliance. The lawsuit was filed. The gate was installed. The path forward was the court, and the court would have the deed and the easement recording, and the maintenance log, and the 20 years of receipts, and the 2005 Caldwell refusal letter, and the HOA's own board resolution designating his road as their infrastructure. All of it in Owen's exhibit file, organized and labeled, ready for the hearing that was 4 to 6 months out on the court's calendar. He drank his coffee. Cecily called the county sheriff's office Sunday afternoon, approximately 4 hours after the forum post, approximately 5 hours after the phone call with Nolan, approximately 26 hours after the gate had gone in. The call was logged by the sheriff's dispatch at 2:43 p.m. as a civil complaint. Gate obstruction. Community Access Road, caller identifying as HOA Board President. Dispatch had assigned it a non-emergency response priority, which in the county's Sunday afternoon queue meant a deputy would arrive within 2 to 3 hours. Deputy Karen Sowell had drawn the call. She had been with the county sheriff's office for 9 years, assigned to the Western District for the past 4, and her call history in the Western District included a sufficient number of property boundary complaints that she had developed a standard pre-response protocol. Pull the parcel records before driving to the site, because a deputy who arrived at a property boundary dispute without having read the parcel data was a deputy who was going to spend the call being managed by whoever had the more confident narrative. She had learned that lesson in her second year and had not repeated it. She had pulled the parcel records from the county's GIS and deed database before leaving the substation. She had searched the address, the road's county highway connection point, and had found 2 parcels, Nolan's 180-acre parcel to the west and the Millstone Ridge HOA's common area parcel to the east. She had opened Nolan's parcel record first. The deed index had shown 2 recorded instruments associated with the parcel, the 2001 acquisition deed and the 2003 private road easement recording. She had opened the easement recording and had read it. The instrument type identified as private road easement, the grantor and grantee both listed as Nolan Voss, the legal description of the easement corridor in meets and bounds, the recording date, the instrument number. She had noted the instrument type in her call notes. Private road easement, recorded 2003, grantor/grantee, same party. Owner's own road on owner's own property. She had opened the HOA's common area parcel record. The deed index had shown the HOA's formation documents and the common area parcel's legal description. She had read the parcel's boundary description and had confirmed that the HOA's common area parcel's western boundary ran along Nolan's eastern parcel boundary, the 2 parcels sharing a boundary line with no overlap and no recorded cross-parcel easement in either parcel's deed index. She had searched the HOA's parcel record specifically for any easement instrument granting access across Nolan's parcel. She had found none. She had then pulled the county road records for the road's address range. The County Road Network database, the system that tracked every road in the county's jurisdiction, public and private, maintained and unmaintained, showed the road as a private road, owner listed as Nolan Voss, county maintenance status listed as none, public dedication status listed as not dedicated. The road did not appear in the county's road maintenance schedule, the county's road surface inventory, or the county's public right-of-way records. It was not a county road. It was not a public road. It was a private road on private property, the county's own records confirming it in 3 separate database fields. She had noted the road network record in her call notes and had driven to the site. She had arrived at 4:20 p.m., the gate visible from the county highway approach, the green HOA sign at the road's entrance reading Millstone Ridge, secondary entrance facing her as she turned onto the road's approach. She had driven the 200 feet from the highway to the gate and had parked the cruiser. The gate was closed, the swing gate across the road's 12-foot opening, the keypad panel on the left post, the solar opener on the right. The chain link panel was standard agricultural gate material. The post foundations were concrete set, the gate frame galvanized steel. She had gotten out of the cruiser and had looked at the gate and had looked at the road on both sides. She had looked at the orange-topped wooden stake in the road's shoulder at the gate's eastern side. The maintenance marker stake, 16 years old, slightly weathered, the orange paint faded to a burnt orange at the top, but still visible. She had noted the stake in her call notes. She had called the number in the parcel record's contact field, Nolan's cell number. He had answered on the second ring and had said, "This is Nolan Voss." She had identified herself and had said, "Deputy Sowell, County Sheriff. I'm at your gate on the road off the county highway. I have a complaint from the Millstone Ridge HOA claiming the gate is obstructing their community access road." Nolan had said, "The road is my private property. The easement recording is in the county deed records. Instrument number. I can give you the number if you need it." She had said, "I have it. I pulled the parcel records before coming out. I also pulled the county road records. The road isn't in our public road network." She had paused. She had said, "Is there a reason you installed the gate now, after the road has been in use for 18 years? He had said, "I filed a quiet title and trespass action in county court on Tuesday. Case number, Owen Pratt is my attorney of record. The HOA refused my demand to acknowledge the road's private status and negotiate a recorded easement. I installed the gate after the demand was rejected and the lawsuit was filed. She had said, the gate is on your property as described in the easement recording. He had said, confirmed by survey before installation. The post foundations are within 6 inches of the survey position. She had said, I'm going to need to look at the gate's position relative to the county highway right-of-way. She had walked from the gate to the highway connection point with her measuring wheel, rolling the distance from the gate's closed position to the highway right-of-way boundary marker. The gate was 194 feet from the right-of-way line. She had noted the measurement and had walked back to the gate and had looked at the keypad panel and the road on the development side. The internal road visible through the chain link panel, running east into the Millstone Ridge development. The residential units visible at the road's far end. She had called Cecily. She had identified herself and had said she was at the gate and had reviewed the parcel records and had some questions. Cecily had arrived at the gate in 11 minutes. She lived in the development's second unit from the secondary entrance. The proximity to the entrance one of the reasons she had used it daily for 4 years as board president, and had never thought carefully about who owned the road it connected to. Cecily had said, when she arrived, "Thank you for coming. This gate is blocking our access road. We've used this road for 18 years. Deputy Soul had said, I've reviewed the parcel records. The road is in the private road easement recording under Mr. Voss's parcel. It's his private property. There's no recorded easement in the HOA's parcel record granting access across his parcel. Cecily had said, we've been using it for 18 years. That has to count as something. Deputy Soul had said, that's a legal question for the court. I'm not in a position to make that determination. What I can tell you is that the gate is on Mr. Voss's private property. It's not in the county highway right-of-way, and I don't see a code violation. The gate is on private property. He has the right to install a gate on his private property. Cecily had said, so you're not going to make him open it. Deputy Soul had said, I don't have grounds to require him to open a gate on his private property. If there's a court order requiring him to provide access, I can enforce that. There isn't one currently. Cecily had looked at the gate for a moment. She had said, the HOA has a county sign permit for signs on this road. Deputy Soul had said, I saw the sign permit in the county's records. The permit application described the road as HOA Common Area Infrastructure. The parcel records show the road is Mr. Voss's private property. I'm going to note that discrepancy in my report. She had said it in the flat, professional tone of a deputy who was noting a factual discrepancy for the record and not editorializing about its implications. Cecily had looked at her. Deputy Soul had looked back with the expression of someone who had read the parcel records and was not confused about what they said. Cecily had said, what does that mean for the sign permit? Deputy Soul had said, that's a question for the county's permit office. My report goes to the sheriff's office, and I'll flag the permit discrepancy for the county road records office, which is standard procedure when I find a permit issued against a road whose ownership doesn't match the permit application. She had taken Cecily's contact information and Nolan's contact information and had photographed the gate from 3 angles. The gate face from the development side, the gate face from the highway side, and the gate's position relative to the highway connection point, with the measuring wheel's reading visible in the frame. She had noted the orange maintenance stake in 2 photographs. She had gotten back in the cruiser and had driven back to the substation. Her report had been completed Monday morning, 4 pages, the standard incident report format with the extended narrative section that property disputes required. She had described the complaint, the parcel record review, the site inspection, the measuring wheel confirmation, the conversations with Nolan and Cecily. She had documented her findings in the findings section. Gate located on private parcel, confirmed by deed record and easement recording. No public right-of-way obstruction. No county road network record for the road. No recorded easement in HOA parcel record for access across private parcel. No code violation identified. Complaint not sustained. She had written the permit discrepancy notation in the report's additional observations section. During review of the county's permit records in connection with this complaint, this officer noted that sign permit number, issued to the Millstone Ridge HOA approximately 8 weeks prior, described the road as HOA Common Area Infrastructure. The county's parcel records and road network database show the road as private property owned by Nolan Voss, not HOA Common Area. This discrepancy is forwarded to the County Road Records Office per standard procedure for permit parcel ownership mismatches identified during field investigations. The report had been filed Monday morning. A copy had gone to the Sheriff's Office's Records Division. A forwarding flag had gone to the County Road Records Office with the permit number and the parcel record citation attached. Owen had called Nolan Monday afternoon. He had received the report through the county's public records request he had filed the day the gate went in, a standard precautionary filing to capture any official documents generated by the expected police response. He had read the report and had said, "Deputy Soule did the work. She pulled the parcel records, confirmed the gate's position, and noted the permit discrepancy in her report. The permit discrepancy notation is now in the Sheriff's Office's official record and has been forwarded to the County Road Records Office." Nolan had said, "How long for the Road Records Office to act on it?" Owen had said, "The forwarding flag has a standard 30-day processing window for permit parcel mismatch referrals. But the permit revocation, if they confirm the mismatch and revoke, is an administrative action, not a field investigation. It's a document review against the parcel records. In my experience with this office, when the parcel records are clear and the mismatch is obvious, they act faster than 30 days. He had been right. The County Road Records Office had completed its review in 11 days. The review had been straightforward. The road records supervisor had pulled the sign permit, the HOA's application, and the parcel records for the road's address. She had confirmed the mismatch in the same sequence Deputy Soule had confirmed it. The permit application said HOA Common Area Infrastructure. The parcel records said Nolan Voss, Private Road Easement. The County Road Network database said Private Road, not dedicated. She had noted 3 independent database sources all saying the same thing, and the permit application saying something different, and had issued the revocation. The permit revocation letter had gone out by certified mail to the Millstone Ridge HOA, to Cecily Marsh as the permit applicant's signatory, and to the county's sign permit office for its records. The letter had stated that sign permit number was revoked, effective immediately, on the basis that the permit application had incorrectly described the installation location as HOA Common Area Infrastructure, when the county's parcel records established the location as private property owned by a third party. The signs installed under the revoked permit were required to be removed within 30 days of the revocation letter's receipt. The county's sign permit office was directed to update its records accordingly. The Road Records Office had also added the boundary notation to both parcel records, Nolan's parcel and the HOA's common area parcel, the same administrative instrument that Phil Sutter's referral had generated in the Sycamore Bluff matter, present in both parcel records in the county's digital system, visible to any title examiner or due diligence review. The notation read, "Per Sheriff's Office Incident Report Number and County Road Records Office Review Number. The road located at this address is private property owned by the adjacent parcel number, with no recorded public dedication or third-party easement of record. Sign permit number, previously issued to the Millstone Ridge HOA for installations on this road, has been revoked. See quiet title action pending in county court, case number." Nolan had received the revocation letter and the parcel notation confirmation from Owen on the same call. Owen had pulled both from the county's online records the day they posted and had called Nolan immediately. He had said, "The permit is revoked. Both parcel records are flagged. The court case number is in the notation." Nolan had said, "And the signs are still up." Owen had said, "The revocation letter gives them 30 days to remove. The court order, when it comes, will require removal as well. The 30-day administrative deadline and the court's order are going to converge. The hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks out, which means the revocation's 30-day deadline will expire before the hearing, and if the signs are still up at the hearing, the revocation non-compliance will be an additional exhibit." Nolan had said, "They'll be up." Owen had said, "Probably. Let them be." Nolan had noted the revocation and the parcel notation in his maintenance log. Sign permit revoked. County Road Records Office, effective immediately. 30-day removal deadline. Both parcel records flagged. Private road, no public dedication, no HOA easement. Court case number cited. Deputy Soule report. Gate confirmed lawful. Complaint not sustained. Permit discrepancy forwarded. Record. Current. He had looked at the notation's last line, the court case number in both parcel records, the same permanent flag that Marcus Teal's survey had generated in the Sycamore Bluff matter, sitting in the county's digital system where every title examiner and every lender and every new HOA board member doing due diligence would find it on the first screen of parcel data. He had closed the log and had driven to the gate to check its operation. The cycle test he performed every Monday, the gate opening and closing on the keypad code and the remote, the opener's solar charge adequate, the chain link panel intact. He had stood at the gate for a moment and had looked at the 4 HOA signs still on the road, the Millstone Ridge sign at the highway connection point, the resident access road sign at the culvert crossing, the 15 miles per hour sign at the road's midpoint, the HOA maintained no trespassing sign at the connection point beside the gate. The signs the permit office had issued in error, the signs the road records office had revoked, the signs that 240 households had seen every day for 8 weeks, and that were now operating under a revoked permit on private property, whose parcel record flagged the discrepancy in the county's permanent database. He had looked at them for a moment in the morning light. The hearing was 6 weeks out. The maintenance log was current. The gate was operational. He drove back to the house. The hearing was Thursday at 9 a.m. Courtroom 2, Judge Harold Spears presiding. Nolan sat in the gallery's first row behind Owen's table. Cecily sat behind the HOA's counsel table, beside a property attorney named Dale Fitch, whom the HOA had retained after the sheriff's report, and the permit revocation had made it clear that Warren's one-paragraph board resolutions were insufficient for what was coming. Owen presented first. He moved through the exhibits in the sequence the complaint built them: the deed, the easement recording, the road construction permit, the county road network record showing no public dedication. He placed the easement recording's first page on the document presenter and left it there while he described the 2005 Caldwell correspondence. The easement request, Nolan's refusal, Caldwell's letter stating their counsel had concluded no easement was required. He noted the developer's subsequent bankruptcy and the HOA's formation, the assumption transferring with the assets. He called Nolan to the stand for one purpose: to authenticate the maintenance log. Nolan described the log's format, the inspection frequency, the receipt documentation system, the 20-year total. Owen had the maintenance log summary as an exhibit, the annual cost totals by year, the 20-year aggregate of $84,000, each year's total referenced to the receipts in the file. He asked Nolan one question: in 20 years of maintaining this road, did you ever receive a contribution, payment, or reimbursement from the Millstone Ridge HOA for any portion of that maintenance cost? Nolan said, no. Owen asked, did you ever see any maintenance work performed on this road by any contractor you did not hire? Nolan said, no. Owen tendered the maintenance log summary and the receipt file as exhibits and sat down. Dale Fitch's presentation was the prescriptive easement argument, structured, competent, and built on the one factual pillar the HOA possessed: 18 years of continuous, open, uninterrupted use of the road by 240 households. He cited the statutory period, the open and notorious element, the continuous use element. He described the secondary entrance's installation and the community's reliance on the road as a daily access route. He argued that 18 years of use without the owner's objection established the prescriptive right the HOA's access required. Owen's response was 4 sentences in rebuttal. Prescriptive easement requires hostile use, use that is inconsistent with the owner's rights, adverse to the owner's interest, and not made with the owner's permission. Nolan's maintenance log establishes that he maintained the road at his own expense twice annually for the entire 18-year period. An owner who inspects his road every spring and fall, who fills its potholes and cleans its culverts and patches its surface, is not an owner who has acquiesced to adverse use. He is an owner who has been actively present on his property throughout the period the adverse use is claimed. The maintenance log defeats the hostility element. The prescriptive easement claim fails on the evidence. Judge Spears had been reading the maintenance log summary during Owen's rebuttal. He looked up when Owen finished and looked at Dale Fitch. He said, "Counsel, does the HOA have any record of maintenance work performed on this road? Contractor invoices, work orders, receipts, anything documenting maintenance the HOA performed on the road it assessed residents to maintain?" Dale Fitch said, The HOA's position is that the maintenance assessment was prospective, funds set aside for future maintenance. Judge Spears said, "That's not what I asked. Does the HOA have any maintenance records for this road?" Dale Fitch said, "No, Your Honor." Judge Spears made a note. He looked at the maintenance log summary again. The 20 years of entries, the $84,000 aggregate, the twice-annual inspection cycle that had continued without interruption from 2003 through the date of filing. He looked at the HOA's board resolution designating the road as community infrastructure. He looked at the easement recording. He said, "I'm prepared to rule." The ruling was 5 minutes. The road was Nolan's private property, established by the deed and the easement recording and confirmed by the county's own road network records. The prescriptive easement claim failed. The maintenance log demonstrated continuous owner activity throughout the claimed adverse use period, defeating the hostility element the claim required. The HOA's 18 years of use was unauthorized trespass, not prescriptive use. The trespass claim was sustained. The quiet title finding established the road as Nolan's private property, with no easement of record for the HOA's use. The HOA was ordered to remove all 4 signs from Nolan's road within 30 days. The HOA was ordered to rescind the road maintenance assessment and refund all amounts collected under it to residents. The HOA was ordered to reimburse Nolan's legal fees and documented maintenance costs. The $84,000 receipt file, submitted as an exhibit, was the measure of the trespass damages. Owen would submit the fee documentation within 30 days. Judge Spears signed the judgment and moved to the next matter. Nolan sat in the gallery and looked at the courtroom's front wall for a moment. The judgment signed, the road confirmed, the maintenance log's 20 years of twice-annual entries now a court exhibit, establishing both his ownership behavior and the failure of the HOA's only defense. He had built the road in 2003. He had maintained it for 20 years. He had recorded the easement the week after construction. He had kept every receipt. Owen gathered his exhibits and turned to him and said, 30 days for the signs. Nolan said, "They'll need the sheriff for that." Owen said, "I know. Let's talk about the easement negotiation terms." They walked out of courtroom 2 past Dale Fitch at the HOA's table and past Cecily in the gallery's last row, her hands in her lap, looking at the floor with the expression of a person who had presided over a 4-to-1 board vote to reject a demand letter and had watched that decision produce a court judgment, a $84,000 damages award, a permit revocation, and a gate that was still closed on her development's secondary entrance. Nolan nodded to her as he passed. She did not look up. The 30-day removal deadline fell on a Wednesday. The HOA had not removed the signs. Owen had anticipated this. He had told Nolan at the end of the hearing that the signs would likely require the sheriff's enforcement, and he had prepared the enforcement request the day the judgment was signed, ready to file on day 31 if the deadline passed without compliance. It passed without compliance. Owen filed the enforcement request Thursday morning. The sheriff's office assigned the execution to Deputy Sowell, the same deputy who had responded to Cecily's gate complaint 6 weeks earlier, who had read the parcel records before driving to the site, who had noted the permit discrepancy in her report and forwarded it to the road records office. The assignment was coincidental in the administrative sense and entirely logical in the evidentiary sense. She had the site knowledge, the parcel record familiarity, and the case background that made the execution straightforward. She had arrived at the road's highway connection point at 9 a.m. on a Friday with the court order, a post driver bar, and a county public works crew of 2. The crew's job was physical, the sign removal and post extraction, the work that the court order authorized. Deputy Sowell's job was the official presence that made the removal a court-ordered action rather than a property dispute. The uniform and the badge and the order document that established the legal authority behind the crew's tools. She had not known about the dash cam. The dash cam belonged to a resident named Marcus Webb, Unit 47, the 3rd unit from the secondary entrance, a resident who commuted to work early and whose vehicle's dash cam had been recording his daily approach to the secondary entrance for 2 years as a standard insurance precaution. Marcus had been watching the deadline approach on the community forum with the attention of a resident who had read the parcel records online the Sunday the gate went in and had understood immediately what the deed index's private road easement entry meant for the HOA's position. He had not posted to the forum after finding the easement recording. He had read the thread, noted Cecily's non-response to the resident who had asked whether the board had known about it, and had waited. He had been in his vehicle at the secondary entrance gate Friday morning at 8:55 a.m., waiting for the gate to open for his commute, when the county public works truck had pulled up behind Deputy Soul's cruiser at the Millstone Ridge sign at the highway connection point. He had understood immediately what was happening. He had turned his dash cam's live recording indicator on, and had driven slowly west on the internal road to a position where his vehicle had a clear sight line to the highway connection point, and had parked. The dash cam had recorded 41 minutes of footage. It had recorded Deputy Soul reading the court order to the empty road, the formal procedure of stating the order's authority before execution, performed correctly whether or not anyone was present to hear it. It had recorded the public works crew removing the first sign, the Millstone Ridge secondary entrance sign at the highway connection point, the two posts pulled from the ground with the post bar, the sign panel detached and laid flat in the truck bed. It had recorded the crew walking east to the resident access road sign at the culvert crossing and repeating the process, the sign coming down in under 4 minutes, the posts leaving 2 clean holes in the road's aggregate shoulder. It had recorded the 15 miles per hour sign at the road's midpoint, standard single post, removed in 90 seconds. It had recorded the HOA maintained no trespassing sign at the secondary entrance connection point beside the gate. The sign that had told residents this was HOA maintained property. The sign that had been posted on private property under a revoked permit beside a gate whose owner had the only code. Removed last, the post extracted, the panel in the truck bed with the other 3. 41 minutes, 4 signs, 2 clean equipment passes down the road and back. Deputy Soul walking the road after the crew finished, photographing the 4 empty post holes for the execution record. The road running clear and unmarked between the highway and the gate. Marcus had uploaded the footage to the community forum at 11 a.m. Friday. The full 41 minutes, no edit, no commentary, titled, "Court Order Executed This Morning." All 4 signs removed by County Sheriff and Public Works. He had added 1 sentence below the title. Parcel records have been public the whole time. The road has never been ours. The forum had generated 340 replies in the first 12 hours. The footage had been clipped and posted to 3 neighborhood social media groups by Friday afternoon. By Saturday morning, it had reached the broader internet. A local news aggregator had embedded it. A property rights discussion forum had linked it. And 2 YouTube channels that covered HOA dispute content had posted reaction videos using the dashcam footage under fair use commentary. By Sunday evening, the original forum post had been viewed 11,000 times, and the clipped versions had accumulated 40,000 combined views across platforms. The internet's reaction had the specific character that HOA overreach footage generated, when the underlying facts were clear and the official action was visible. Not outrage exactly, but the collective satisfaction of watching an institutional assumption meet a court order and a post driver. The comments ran variations on the same theme. Someone built it, someone maintained it, someone had the deed, and the signs came down on camera. Cecily had posted her resignation to the community forum Sunday evening, a single paragraph, effective immediately, citing personal reasons, thanking the community for 4 years of service. She had not mentioned the road, the judgment, the footage, or the 40,000 views. The new interim board president was a resident named Howard Garrett, a unit owner who had been the dissenting vote in the 4-1 board decision to reject Owen's demand letter, whose dissent the meeting minutes had recorded without elaboration. He had assumed the interim presidency the Monday after Cecily's resignation and had called Owen's office at 9 a.m. that morning. He had said, "I want to resolve this correctly. What does the HOA need to do?" Owen had said, 3 things. First, negotiate a recorded easement with Mr. Voss at fair market value, an easement that correctly documents the HOA's access right in the county deed records, the instrument that should have been recorded in 2006. Second, satisfy the court's damages order, the legal fees and the 20-year maintenance costs documented in the receipt file, $84,000 plus the fee award. Third, send a written communication to every resident explaining what happened, that the secondary entrance has been operating on private property without a recorded easement for 18 years, that the board formally designated a road it did not own as community infrastructure, and that the resolution going forward is a negotiated recorded easement and the court-ordered payments. Howard had said, "The third item is going to be a difficult letter to write." Owen had said, "I know, write it anyway." The residents found the parcel records themselves. 340 of them watched the signs come down on dashcam footage. They already know. The letter is the board acknowledging what they know. Howard had spent 2 hours drafting the resident letter. It had gone out by email and postal mail to all 240 units the following Wednesday. 4 paragraphs, plain language, no euphemism. The secondary entrance road is private property owned by an adjacent parcel holder. The HOA has never held a recorded easement for its use. The board voted in March to reject a demand to acknowledge this and negotiate a formal easement. A court has found for the property owner and has ordered sign removal, assessment rescission, and payment of the owner's legal and maintenance costs. The HOA is now in good faith negotiation for a recorded easement. The $45 road maintenance assessment collected this year will be refunded to all residents. The board takes responsibility for the decisions that led to this outcome. The easement negotiation had taken 6 weeks. Owen had represented Nolan and a property attorney named Clara Venn, retained by Howard on the HOA's behalf, had represented the HOA. The negotiations framework had been established in the first call. The easement would be a permanent recorded easement appurtenant to the Millstone Ridge Development's common area parcel, granting non-exclusive access to Nolan's road for residential ingress and egress. The compensation would reflect the road's original construction cost allocated to the secondary access use, 20 years of maintenance costs, and the legal proceedings. The maintenance going forward would be cost-shared under a recorded maintenance agreement attached to the easement instrument. They had reached the figure in the third negotiating session. The HOA had paid it within 30 days of the easement instrument's execution. A wire transfer to Owen's trust account, dispersed to Nolan the same day. The easement had been recorded in the county deed records the week after payment cleared. The instrument appearing in both parcel records, the HOA's parcel and Nolan's parcel. The access right finally documented in the county deed records 19 years after the secondary entrance had been built, and 18 years after Nolan had declined to grant it to a developer who had proceeded anyway. Nolan had used the payment to repave the road. He had contracted the full 0.6-mile repave the week after the easement recorded, milling the existing surface and laying a new 3-inch asphalt course from the highway connection point to the gate, the first full repave since the road's original construction in 2003. The crew had worked 2 days. Nolan had been on site both days, watching the milling machine take the old surface and the paving machine lay the new one, the road emerging behind the screed in smooth, dark asphalt that smelled of fresh pavement and reflected the morning sky in its undisturbed surface. He had walked the road the morning after the crew left. The asphalt was smooth under his boots. No crack, no patch, no aggregate showing through the surface wear. The drainage culverts were clear, the inlets open, the head walls intact at the swale crossing, where the 36-inch culvert had been doing its work for 21 years. The gate at the secondary entrance connection point was open on its automatic arm, the keypad panel facing the development's internal road. The gate's presence still marking the boundary between his property and theirs, even as it stood open on the easement that now made the crossing legitimate and recorded. He had looked at the 4 empty post holes at the sign locations, the holes still visible in the aggregate shoulder, where the county's post driver bar had extracted the HOA's signposts 6 weeks earlier. The holes unfilled, the aggregate settled around their edges. He would fill them with cold patch on his next maintenance pass. For now, they were the physical record of what had been there, and what the court order had removed. The road shoulder carrying the negative impression of 4 signs that had stood for 8 weeks on private property under a revoked permit before the sheriff had arrived with a crew and a court order and a deputy who had read the parcel records before driving to the site. He had pulled his maintenance log from his jacket pocket. He had been carrying it in the field since 2003, the current volume a replacement of the original, but the same format, the same hardbound notebook, the same dated entries and the same layout, and had written, easement recorded, road repaved, signs removed, matter recorded. He had initialed the entry and closed the log. He had walked back to his truck at the gate and had gotten in and had driven west toward the highway. the full 0.6 miles of new asphalt under the truck's tires, the road running smooth from the gate to the connection point, the drainage structures performing at every low point, the aggregate shoulders intact on both sides. He had turned onto the county highway and had driven 200 feet north, and had turned around and had driven back, east on his road, the full 0.6 miles again. The new surface, smooth and dark in the morning light, the gate coming into view at the far end with its automatic arms still open. He had parked at the gate and had gotten out and had stood at the gate's eastern face and had looked back down the road, the 0.6 miles of private road running west to the county highway, the drainage swale visible at the culvert crossing, the 4 empty post holes in the shoulder at the sign locations, the fresh asphalt reflecting the sky and the long, flat surface of a road that had been built correctly and permitted correctly and recorded correctly and maintained for 21 years and now used correctly. The easement in the county deed records where it should have been in 2006, the matter in the court record where it needed to be, the maintenance log current and closed in his jacket pocket. He had built it in 2003. He still owned it. He got in the truck and drove home.